Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. We are reviewing another book today. This one is called You Should Have Left by Daniel Kelman. So, I finished this book maybe 2 weeks ago, I believe, 2 weeks ago. It was a very good book, and I finished it rather quickly. I think it took me about a few hours. I read it over a single night before I went to sleep, so it's a pretty quick read. And it is in line with, if you saw my previous book reviews, I did a review on Tender is the Flesh. And I did another book review, which, come to think of it, I don't remember what book I reviewed. But this is a horror book similar to those kinds of ideas. Tender is the Flesh is a lot more upfront egregious. This one's a little bit more spooky, so don't feel, a general warning about content. However, this is not nearly as offensive of a book. It's more of a ghost story. So here's the cover. It's got these blue smudges, these kind of orange metallic colors. On the back, we kind of have a little bit about the author. We have the spine, You Should Have Left by Daniel Kelman. And it is, Daniel Kelman is a German author, so this has been translated. And I like reading books, especially horror books, that are from other languages, because I think us in America, we have I'm American. Us in America, we have kind of our own idea about what horror is and what horror can be. And I think other places around the world have different ideas of that. So this is a German horror story. Very interesting. This book is about a writer, a screenplay writer. His name is, I don't remember, come to think of it. Doesn't really, he has a name, obviously. He's a screenwriter, and him and his wife and their daughter move to an Airbnb in the mountain in this small town so that he can focus on writing his next big screenplay, and his family can take some time to relax from, he just, essentially had a big break. He's working on the sequel. So already the book is told through a week-long diary entries of his experience in this Airbnb. It's this massive, I wouldn't say mansion, but it's a big house. And as he's kind of kicking around in the house, strange things start happening. Words start getting written in his journal that he has no memory of writing, which we as the reader then read. There are several instances where he walks into a room and completely forgets what the room layout was, or it's a different room than he thought it was going to be, or he'll turn down a hallway and the hallway is seemingly a lot longer than it should be. So we're painting this scene of a screenwriter slowly starting to question himself, dealing with the stress of, well, maybe I'm just stressed out, that's why I don't remember there being this painting here. or, oh, I guess I thought this was the living room, but it's the laundry room. So it's a very interesting idea, kind of similar to ghost stories we've come more accustomed to, or you maybe have heard of before, but it has certain nuances and twists towards the end that are unique to this book and to this story as a horror fan. So we have the main character, his wife, whose name is, I don't remember, and their daughter, whose name I also don't remember. Come to think of it, I should have made notes. So I know that Esther is their daughter. So, yeah. I believe now should be the point where I claim spoiler warning. I'm going to talk about some of the twists and the kind of things and try and make it a little brief about this book. I think that if you are a fan of horror, you should read this book. I got it for $15 at a Barnes & Noble. It's very cheap. Nothing crazy. If you want to experience it yourself, go do that. I highly recommend it. Short book, short read, enjoyable. If you would like to stay, let's talk about some of the nuances of this book. So, there's this give and take of horror coming from the human nature as well as this house that they're living in. So, him and his wife are kind of having tensions and having arguments and are struggling through their marriage. And they talk about how that has impacted their lives. Having a small child has impacted their tensions, and they're both stressed out in this house. They argue, they bicker, they argue, they bicker, till eventually it's revealed that the wife has been cheating. And there's this kind of peak in the book where now they can't really confront the problem of like a haunted mansion. They have to be people. So the human aspect of the horror is they discuss how this place is kind of cursed, and they talk to some of the village people, and the village people talk about how it's kind of, nobody really lives there. People go missing constantly. You should leave. So they decide to leave. We're going to leave the mansion. We're going to be done with it. Screw the deposit. Screw this. We're leaving. And because they have this big fight about her cheating, she takes the car and leaves. And because of how this house is kind of trapping its guests, she leaves right before this house kind of consumes this man and their daughter. So now we're seeing visions, we're seeing ghosts. Entire rooms are disappearing. And that's the irony of the title, You Should Have Left, is that he had the opportunity to leave and he didn't in time. And now he's trapped in this kind of cycle. There's a point in the end of the book where they try to leave the house and they walk all the way down this mountain with these turns, and they get to the bottom of the mountain and they're back at the top where the house is. So this book takes a lot of kind of the human experience of what being, human, very realistic horror, and then combines it with this idea of a ghost house that you can't leave. And I don't want to spoil too much about the ending in case you're still watching and you decide that you want to go read this book. So I won't talk about how it ends. It ends in a way that is, I would say, satisfactory. We see this, it's a very short book. I believe it's 110 pages maybe. Yeah, it's 111. So being what the situation is, we see the main character kind of grow and evolve to a point where he makes a decision that's for the best. And we see him grow and kind of develop among these 100 pages, being a creative, being a playwright. So I think that this book is very interesting. It is scary, it's spooky, but it is not, gripping my page, like terrified of this. It is more of a psychological slow burn thriller, which I think is very interesting, and it is executed well. I think for it being such a small book, I think it easily could have been longer, but I think the pacing and the length of it was perfect, delivered the message in the time that it needed to. I think the ending isn't predictable, but I think that the climax part of the book is pretty long. You get to a point, maybe, I'll say that you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is what's happening, and then there's an entire section of the book that is about the thrill. And I think as opposed to our American sense of horror of, pull you on to the very end and then knock your teeth in with how scary the climax is, this one was more like, here is the scariness, now we're working through it. Which I don't know if that's a regional thing, maybe it's a German horror over American horror thing, but I felt as though this one, although scary, wasn't leaving me gripping the edge of my seat. I was more ready to watch it kind of unfold. So, that being said, I think I would give this book a 7 out of 10, probably. I want to start rating these books to get some kind of consistency. I thought it was good, and doing what it does, I think it did well, but there are obviously some things that I think could be improved upon and worked through. So, that being said, thank you for tuning in. This has been You Should Have Left by Daniel Kelman, translated by Ross Benjamin, I believe. Yes, Ross Benjamin. Great book. If you have $15 lying around, I think it's a great little thing to just pick up and read. It took me maybe 3 hours to chunk through it. It was really easy. And I'm not a particularly fast reader. It took me only a couple hours to kind of soak it in. So, thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed this book review. If you've made it this far, leave a like and a comment. It really helps me out. Lets me know what you guys like. Go ahead and subscribe. We just hit 100 subscribers. It's very exciting. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next video. Good night, good morning, or good evening.